very happy to be here again. Thank you for the invitation to participate again in the INVALSI conference. And I will try to show this topic about scholarly culture, which is for me an increasingly topic. Is receiving a little bit more attention from me and for over 3 or 4 researchers in which I read, and they are trying to conceptualize this kind of issue in difference from the typical socioeconomic issues. Because that I try to put the focus today in this topic, scholarly culture in the families, and how is this connected with literacy as a very typical skill evaluated in schools, and civic knowledge. This is a combination between the typical skill evaluated in schools and more typical or more common evaluated skill, the civic knowledge, and how this is connected with another kind of attitudinal issues. And the other part of the study is compare Chile and Italy, using the opportunity, for me is a unique opportunity, using the combination of data, national evaluation and ICCS evaluation. And it's not possible in the whole countries in where ICCS is applied. Only for me, as you know, only in Chile and Italy for now. Okay, yes, as a general context, this is the context of my PhD thesis, and it's about the disconnection between the citizens and politics. And in general, we can observe that in different parts of the world. And why this is important, this disconnection, this increasing disconnection between this two aspects, the population and how distrust in the politics, and the people participate less in the election of representatives, and that is a very, very huge threat to the democracies, overall to the legitimacy of the democracies, legitimacy of the decisions in the political institutions. And because using that context, I try to understand, and I think it's important to understand, how young population obtain or acquire the competence for participating in the public life. Overall, focusing in this topic specifically in the knowledge. In general, we can observe in the literature overall in political science, but as well in ICCS study, they focus on civic knowledge. And why that is important? Why we can think in that kind of skill, in that kind of specific knowledge? Because refers a kind of expertise, how citizens obtain the skills to read the information in the public life and how to use it. For example, how to judge the public information, how to decide to participate, how to decide how to voting, for example, how to read the information about historical and political issues, and in that way participate in a better way in the public life. And this have 2 parts. In the first step, is very related or impact by socioeconomic issues. For example, it's related with social position. People with higher education obtain higher levels of knowledge. That is typical information only in adult population and in young population. And people who obtain higher levels of knowledge have more willingness to participate in the voting and in mobilizations and in march and protest and so on and so forth. Because that's important. It's a very central issue about the political system and how population relate with the public system. Because that we are trying to put the focus in the 14 years old population and how this is acquired using this frame. In the first step, or a second step in here, how is related with reading skills. And in here I try to combine in these 2 aspects of the schools. In a first step, the civic knowledge and how students obtain different levels of scores, and how this is related with the reading skills. and using the other part of the evaluation and the typical role of the school. Reading skills and the acquisition of reading skills is a very important part of the experience in the school life and the life in general, not only in the schools. And people with higher achievement in reading skills establish more complex relation about the information in the text and in the life in general, identify meanings, argumentation, and in general is related with the skills for deliberation, for example. In that way allows, for example, to learn different types of elements, topics, for example, about the complexity of people, in order to tolerate the difference, allowed to learn about the history, about the social life, about politics, about social issues, for example. And in that way, it can be understood as an antecedent of the acquisition of civic knowledge. If, for example, the student obtain higher skills of readings, it's possible that will be connected with the acquisition of this kind of other kind of knowledge, the civic specific issues. About for example, the concept of democracy, about the values, about the principles, about the procedures, about the institutions, about the social facts, for example, which is the number of the representatives in the parliament, for example, and that comes with information. And in that way, we can connect this two aspect, reading and civic knowledge. And in general, it's not possible to connect both because there is not too much information in where we can obtain both evaluation at the same time. And here we have an opportunity to evaluate that. And the other part of the story is the scholarly culture. The idea of families are oriented to this specific issue in a different way or separated from the socioeconomic gradient. And how evaluate this? Typically is manifest in the book-oriented family, because family buy a lot of books, and in that way we can obtain kind of orientation of families. But not only that. For example, family read a little more, play a little more with the books, and try to develop higher vocabulary, reading activities, and so on and so forth about that. And this is different from the socioeconomic gradient typically, because we can obtain families with lower education but with higher orientation to scholarly culture, and families with higher education but with lower orientation to scholarly culture. And for example, when we observe the correlation between books at home and education in ICCS, the correlation is lower than the correlation between education and socioeconomic position. And in that way we can think this as a little bit different aspect. It's related as well, but it's not exactly and not perfect, it's less than perfect. It's less than 0.5, the correlation. Because that I try to think, and following some authors, try to think this aspect as a different aspect of the family orientation to the academic culture. And this typically orientation is connected with reading skills, for example, numeracy, and technological problem solving, for example. And in my thesis, I found a little bit connection between scholarly culture and civic knowledge and some attitudinal issues in citizenship. And in that way, I propose these three objectives are true, and the comparison between, to evaluate the association between civic outcomes, such as civic knowledge and participation here, with the scholarly culture. This is the first step. And the second step is to evaluate the association between reading skills with scholarly culture, focusing overall in the indirect role of the scholarly culture. And compare both samples that we have in this study. This is just a representation of the general model. Scholarly culture connected with reading skills and political knowledge or civic knowledge. How reading skills is connected with civic knowledge in here directly. This is a direct path from scholarly culture, and how this process could be connected with participation. Another issue. The comparison, the model for Italy and the model for Chile. This is the comparison. As I say, this is a very good opportunity to combine the data from national evaluation in Chile and Italy with the ICCS evaluation. Both institutions can merge the information for students that participate in Chile and Italy with the national evaluation. And in that case, we can put that extra information, the reading evaluation, math evaluation, science evaluation. And this happened that in both countries have the coincidence between the 8th grade evaluation in the same age, the same year when ICCS was applied. Here we use these variables, reading literacy measures from the national evaluation in Chile and national evaluation in Italy, from the INVALSI, from the Agency of Quality of Education in Chile. The civic knowledge test was applied the same in both countries by ICCS study. Participation scales, in this case, the intention to vote, intention to participate in legal activities, and intention to participate in illegal activities. And as a representation of the scholarly culture, here, just the number of books at home. This is the unique comparable measure in both countries, but for example, in Chile, we have another measure about reading activities and so on and so forth. Maybe in the future, I will go in deep in that sample. And I use only two control variables, the parental education, in order to separate the scholarly culture from the educational level, and student gender, just for controlling a little bit. Okay, so results. This is the connection, and you can observe the unstandardized betas from the scholarly culture to reading skills, and from the scholarly culture to civic knowledge. And in black is Italy, and in red is Chile. Okay, we can observe a significant connection in both. And just to try to understand a little bit a comparison between both, for example, a student with 200 or more books compared with a student that doesn't have books in the home, or have less than 10, obtain 41 extra points in the reading test. That is one standard deviation of the test in the Italy sample. And a student with 200 or more books compared with a student with no books or less than 10 obtain 102 extra points in civic knowledge. That is one standard deviation in the sample. In the case of Chile, it's almost the same. 40 extra points in reading test, and the standard deviation is 50. It's a little bit less than one standard deviation. In that case, the relation is a little less strong. And in the civic knowledge is 79 points, the difference between those. And okay, this is just a representation of how is connected this kind of scholarly culture with this true kind of achievement issues. And how is connected reading skills with political knowledge? Okay, this is unstandardized information, but the first information is significant connection, statistically significant connection. How we can understand the first part of this? The indirect effect. For example, a student who live in families with higher scholarly culture represented in more books obtain or develop higher reading skills, and in that way develop high civic knowledge indirectly. And the size of effect is 47% of the total effect is in the case of Italy, and 57% of the total effect in the case of Chile. The half of the effect of the scholarly culture of civic knowledge is throughout reading skills. And how strong is the connection between reading skills with civic knowledge? Here is a representation. This is uncontrolled, just a scatter plot, the fifth line. But in the lower part, we can observe a representation. For example, a student with 250 points, that is one standard deviation above the average. In the case of Italy, in reading obtained 598 points in civic knowledge. That is higher than the national average in Italy. And in Chile, when a student with 300 points in reading, that is one standard deviation above the average, the national average, obtain 496 points in civic knowledge. That is higher the average of the national average. Yes?
It's my fault, but could you describe civic knowledge in terms of what variable are you talking about exactly?
Yes, and
what major? Because otherwise, I think I can misunderstand the point.
yeah, it's okay. It's no problem. Just I'm going back a little bit because I didn't explain so well this. Yeah, this is civic knowledge. Is a test, 79 questions, which students respond each by each. It is a very complex design because there are booklets and complex design. They generate plausible values, and using that plausible values, you can estimate the national average and the individual score. For civic knowledge, there are specific questions about civic issues. What is the constitution? What are the rules of law? Concepts about civic life.
It's totally a question about knowledge of civic issues, and not about that does not relate necessarily to participation, voting or protesting or any.
It's about
possible behavior related to participation.
Yes, it's about civic knowledge. Exactly, it's about knowledge about the complexity of the democratic society in general. Yes, but the assumption is that kind of measure, that kind of knowledge is connected with another kind of citizenship issues. Okay, and to the time, how is this connected? This process is connected with participation. Here, for example, we can observe that reading skills is a little bit connected with different type of participation, because we can expect that, but that is difficult to explain in general, because the most part of evidence and expectation is the connection between political knowledge and the three types of participation. But yes, as we expect, political knowledge connected positively with intention to vote, and explain around 15% of the variance, and is less connected with legal activity, but positive, and negatively connected with illegal activities, like strike the street, write walls, and some things. And that's the composition of indirect effect. Just for saying something, scholarly culture is connected with reading skills. Reading skills is connected with civic knowledge, and civic knowledge is connected with intention to vote. And that process is repeated in both countries. That is one of the points that I try to do today. Okay, just for discussion and closing. Okay, orientation to family, to scholarly culture, this issue of the family is connected to civic knowledge, directly and indirectly, and indirectly through reading skills. And the process is observed in both countries, almost similar, a little bit less strong in Chile. And this process have a distal effect to participation, mainly to intention to participate in formal activities, and a little less in legal activities, and illegal but negatively. Just for opening the discussion here, okay, what is scholarly culture and could be promoted? I think yes, that is my bet on this issue, and because that I try to betting to separate from the typical socioeconomic issues, because I think we can try to think how school could impact on this issue in the families, about how families can prepare with activities, read about civic issues, but not only about civic issues, just read for playing, for example. And because of that, I think it is important try to identify how scholarly culture will impact on this process of civic issues. And the other part of the story, this process is mainly oriented to civic competence, and I think it is very good news in order to improve this kind of issues about the connection or the relation between youth population and democracies. Thank you.